The stars of the Meridi cluster shimmered like silent witnesses, watching the fall of worlds. One after another, bright colonies that had once been proud and full of life were reduced to ash. The coalition of 12 races had always believed themselves safe in their unity. For centuries they lived in peace, sharing trade, science, and culture across 1,000 systems. But peace was fragile, and peace alone could not stop the storm that had arrived at their gates. The enemy called themselves the Scarlec. To the coalition, they were not just another hostile species. They were a tide of steel and fire. The Scarlec cared nothing for diplomacy, nothing for trade, nothing for words. They swept through planets with ships like claws and armies like locusts. Whole populations vanished in days. The coalition had tried to fight back, but their fleets were scattered, and their weapons seemed like toys against the Scarlec war machines. Now only desperate measures remained. Inside the Grand Hall of Concordia Prime, the leaders of the 12 races gathered. The chamber was enormous, built of crystal and steel. Its ceiling opened to the void where the planet's shield shimmered faintly. Usually the hall echoed with calm debate, but now it was filled with panic and raised voices. "We cannot hold them." "Back!" shouted Counselor Tayran of the Solorians, his scaled arms trembling. "Every fleet we send is torn apart in days. They will be here to Concordia within the month." "And then what?" demanded High Speaker Velru of the Aronix. Her silver feathers quivered as she spoke. "Do you suggest we surrender?" "The Scarlec do not take prisoners. They devour." Others joined in, their voices colliding in the air. Some cried for retreat, others for sacrifice. Yet a single word hung over the hall. One few dared to speak aloud. Extinction. At last, Chancellor Darrow of the Lyrians, a tall figure with pale skin and calm, dark eyes, raised his voice above the chaos. "We have one choice left." The chamber fell quiet. Even the automatic translators seemed to pause, waiting. "The beacon," Darrow said slowly. "We must send the SOS." The words carried weight, heavier than steel. Everyone in the room knew what it meant. The beacon was old. So old that most dismissed it as a relic of another age. It was a universal distress signal, broadcast on frequencies that traveled faster than light through subspace. It was meant to reach anyone, anywhere, no matter how far. But it was not only a cry for help. It was also an invitation, a call across the unknown. "Do you know what you suggest?" whispered Velru. "If we send that signal, we do not choose who will hear it. Anyone could come. Anything." "Better monsters than silence," Darrow replied. For a long time, no one spoke. Finally, Counselor Tayran hissed softly. "There are rumors about the ones who live on the Deathworld." The chamber stirred. That name was not often spoken, even in whispers. Every species knew the story, though most dismissed it as legend. Humans, the Deathworlders. Born on a planet where storms split the skies and predators stalked the land, where even the plants were dangerous. A species said to endure poisons, radiation, and pain that would kill most others. They had claws not of flesh but of will. They were rare in coalition space, but always spoken of with a mix of fear and fascination. "Humans are not allies," said Velru sharply. "They are wild things, in the skin of people. If the SOS reaches them, it will not be mercy they bring, but conquest." "Better conquest than extinction," Darrow said again. His voice was steady, unyielding. "If the Scarlec devour us, we leave nothing. If the Deathworlders come, perhaps something will remain." The silence that followed was deep and bitter. No one wanted to agree, yet no one could deny the truth. At last, with trembling claws, Counselor Tayran pressed the command. A great beacon deep beneath Concordia Prime began to hum, a sound that echoed through the planet's crust. Across the chamber, displays lit up as the signal was released. An old code, bright and piercing, cast into the black ocean of the galaxy. The SOS was sent. Days passed. On every coalition world, life moved in shadow. People prepared for invasion, for evacuation, for the end. Some prayed, others cursed, and many simply waited in despair. Yet all across the coalition, eyes turned to the skies, searching for an answer that might never come. On Concordia, the OW Council met daily, tracking any response. There was none. The beacon continued its endless cry, but the void remained silent. Then on the 12th day, something changed. "Signal detected," announced the technician, her voice thin with disbelief. "Subspace response inbound. Source: unknown." The counselors gathered around the display. Lines of code scrolled across, broken and strange. The automatic translators worked furiously, struggling to form meaning. At last, a single message appeared. "Signal received. Movement initiated. Fleet en route." The counselors stared. "Who?" whispered Velru. "Who answered?" The technician swallowed hard. "The signature is human." The chamber erupted into chaos. Some shouted in terror, others in wild hope. One counselor fainted outright. Velru's feathers flared in horror. "No, this is disaster. The Deathworlders are worse than the Scarlec. They will use our weakness to take everything we have." But Chancellor Darrow only stood silent, his eyes fixed on the words glowing across the screen. Fleet en route. The Deathworlders were coming. Across the stars on the blue world called Earth, the alarm had reached the governments of humanity. On screens and in war rooms, leaders read the alien plea. It was not the first time humanity had heard of the Scarlec. Scouts and traitors whispered of them for years, ruthless raiders spreading across the galaxy. But now, the Scarlec were not far stories. They were real. In the great shipyards of Mars, engines roared to life. Steel Titans, battle-tested and scarred, were brought from their docks. The old fleets were called back into service and new ones prepared. On Earth, factories turned from trade to war. On the colonies, citizens gave what they could: materials, labor, will. Humanity did not move like a gentle tide. It moved like an avalanche, slow at first, then unstoppable. The first fleet launched within days. Ships of iron, their hulls thick and black, their engines blazing white. They carried banners of no empire, but of a species that had survived every cruelty of its homeworld and learned to thrive. The humans had heard the call, and they were coming. Back on Concordia Prime, the news spread like fire. The Deathworlder fleet was moving. For the first time in weeks, the people looked up to the stars, not with despair, but with a strange, sharp hope. Yet among the counselors, fear remained. What kind of saviors had they invited? Would humanity be salvation, or a new doom in disguise? The answer was already on its way, carried in the engines of warships that cut through the void. The SOS had been received. The Deathworlder fleet was on the move. The skies above Earth were alive with fire. Not the fire of destruction, but the fire of creation. Engines burning, ships lifting, and fleets gathering. For the first time in a century, humanity had called all its great powers together. They were not preparing for trade, not for exploration, but for war. The SOS from the coalition had arrived like a spark in dry grass. At first, leaders argued. Some said it was not humanity's fight. Others said the Scarlec would not stop with alien worlds. If the tide kept spreading, Earth would face them sooner or later. But the decision did not come only from leaders. It came from people. Ordinary humans saw the alien distress signal, saw the fear in their eyes, and remembered something deep inside. Humanity knew what it was like to be hunted, to be desperate, to call out for help and receive none. They had lived through endless wars on their own world. They had nearly destroyed themselves many times. And each time, when pushed to the edge, they rose again. So when the beacon called, humanity did not hesitate for long. They answered. On the orbiting shipyards above Mars, colossal hangars opened like the petals of a giant flower. From within came the first fleet, heavy cruisers with dark armor, destroyers armed with rail cannons, carriers loaded with drones and fighters. Each ship carried the mark of Earth, an unbroken circle with 12 points, representing humanity's unity of nations. The fleet was not the largest in the galaxy, Other empires had more ships. Other empires had older, more decorated fleets. But no fleet was built like this one. Every ship was hardened, reinforced, designed to take punishment and keep moving. They were not elegant. They were not beautiful. They were survivors, just like their people. Admiral Kieran Holt stood on the command deck of the battleship Iron Resolve. He was a man of iron himself, broad-shouldered, his face lined from years of duty. Around him, officers reported status: fuel, weapons, navigation. The fleet was ready. "Courses locked," said his navigator. "We have the beacon coordinates. Coalition space, Sector 49. "Time to arrival?" Holt asked. 6 standard days at full burn. Holt gave a single nod. 6 days. 6 days until the Deathworlders appeared on the Coalition's doorstep. "Send the signal," Holt ordered. "Let the galaxy know we are coming." A pulse of energy burst from the Iron Resolve, carried through subspace faster than light. It was not words this time, but a symbol. The mark of Earth. The Deathworlders were on the move. Far away, in the heart of Coalition space, the signal arrived. On Concordia Prime, the counselors gathered once more in the Grand Hall. The technicians displayed the message across the crystal wall, the circle of Earth, 12 points shining around it. "It is true," whispered Counselor Terran. "They are coming." The chamber erupted again, voices filled with both relief and terror. "Do you not see what this means?" Velru cried, her feathers puffing in agitation. "They send fleets, not envoys. They come with weapons in their hands." "And would you rather they come with empty hands?" Chancellor Darrow asked calmly. "The Scarlec will not be moved by words. Only steel will turn them back." Velru shook her head. "You do not understand what you invite. These are Deathworlders. They are predators in the shape of men. They will burn everything we are, even as they save it." But not all agreed with her. Some younger counselors, desperate and tired of fear, leaned forward eagerly. "If they truly fight the Scarlec, should we not welcome them? What matters if they are rough or strange? What matters so long as our people live?" The argument continued deep into the night. But outside the chamber, across the planets of the Coalition, word spread faster than debate. The humans were coming. The Deathworlders had answered, and hope, fragile and dangerous, began to take root. On the colony world of Solaris, children watched the stars every night, waiting to see if the new saviors would appear. Merchants whispered of war fleets while soldiers trained with double the effort, knowing allies might soon stand beside them. On the fortress moon of Dara, commanders drew up new battle maps, wondering how the humans would fight. No one knew their tactics, their strength, or their weakness. All they knew were stories. Humans did not give up. Humans endured. Some were afraid of this endurance. Others prayed it was true. Meanwhile, the Scarlec warlord Korat, High Commander of the invading fleet, heard the news with laughter. His warriors reported strange signals moving toward Coalition space, signals marked with unknown human codes. "Let them come," Korat snarled, his mandibles clacking in amusement. More prey to crush, more bones for the fires. The Scarlec had fought many species before. All had fallen. All had broken. Why should these humans be any different? But beneath his confidence, a small seed of caution stirred. The Deathworlders were a name whispered even in Scarlec raider camps. A name of survivors. A name of danger. Still, Korat dismissed the unease. No matter what came, he would destroy them as he destroyed all others. Back aboard the Iron Resolve, Admiral Holt stood before the wide viewport. Stars streamed past in bright trails as the fleet burned through subspace. 6 days was short for such a journey, but to Holt, it felt like eternity. "Sir," said Captain Alara Mendez, his second in command, "do you think the Coalition truly wants us there? From the reports I've read, half of them fear us more than the enemy. They called us," Holt replied simply. "Fear or not, they sent the signal. And humanity does not ignore a cry for help." Alara hesitated. "And if they turn on us after?" "Then we deal with it after," Holt said. His voice was steady, but his eyes were hard. "Right now, our mission is clear. We stop the Scarlec, we protect lives, that is all that matters." Around them, the bridge crew worked in silence. Many had families back on Earth or the colonies. Many had never seen a Scarlec, but all had seen what war did. None doubted why they were here. The Deathworlders did not fight for glory or conquest, or pride. They fought because someone needed them to fight, and that was enough. As the days passed, the Coalition tracked the human fleet's progress with growing tension. Their ships were massive, dense with weapons, unlike the slender vessels of the Coalition. They moved in perfect formation, like predators hunting together. Scholars whispered comparisons to ancient beasts, to storms given metal and fire. Some counselors wanted to prepare defenses in case the humans turned against them. Others wanted to send honor guards and gifts. Chancellor Darrow remained silent, watching, waiting. He believed the truth of the humans would reveal itself in battle, not in halls of debate. Finally, the 6th day came. The human fleet emerged from subspace at the edge of the Solaris system. One by one, their ships burst into real space, engines flaring, hulls glinting against the starlight. The fleet spread into formation, a wall of iron and fire. Coalition patrols, waiting anxiously, sent cautious signals of greeting. The humans replied with a single phrase, "Stand firm. We are here." On Solaris, the people wept with relief. On Concordia, the council fell into stunned silence. The Deathworlders had arrived, but even as they took their first breath of hope, the skies darkened. From the far edge of the system, the Scarlec appeared. Their fleet was vast, engines glowing red, weapons bristling. They had come for Solaris, ready to tear it apart. The timing was no accident. It was fate, or perhaps destiny. For the first time in history, the Deathworlders and the Scarlec would meet on the same battlefield. And in that moment, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The humans had come in answer to a cry. The Coalition waited in fear and hope. The Scarlec hungered for conquest. The stars would soon bear witness to the clash of death and survival, of fear and courage. The SOS had been received. The fleet had moved. Now, war would decide everything. The Solaris system had never been quiet. Its twin suns burned with steady brilliance, warming the colony world and its moons. Cities spread across its green valleys, while space stations orbited above. For years, Solaris was a place of prosperity. Now it was a place of fear. Every citizen looked to the sky that day. They saw two fleets, one of fire and steel, the other of shadow and hunger. The humans had arrived, just as the Scarlec descended. From the command deck of the battleship Iron Resolve, Admiral Kieran Holt stood like stone. Ahead of him, the Scarlec fleet spread across the void. Their ships looked alive, sharp and jagged, with red lights glowing like eyes. They were numerous, far more than the Coalition expected. Enemy fleet numbers 217 vessels, reported Captain Alara Mendez. Her voice was calm, but her hands tightened on the console. Mix of war cruisers, raiders, and carriers. "And us?" Holt asked. 112 ships, she replied, half their number. The bridge grew tense. Everyone knew what that meant, but Holt's voice remained steady. "Half their number is enough," he said. Coalition patrol ships hovered near the humans, broadcasting cautious signals. Admiral Holt ordered a channel opened. Soon, the image of a Solarian commander appeared on the screen, scales glinting, eyes wide. You truly came," the Solarian said in disbelief. "You called," Holt replied simply. "We answer." The Solarian looked as though he wanted to speak further, but the moment passed. Behind him, alarms rang. The Scarlec were moving. The first shots came like lightning. The Scarlec opened fire with beams of burning plasma, streaks of red tearing across the black. Coalition patrols scattered instantly, shields flaring as they scrambled to survive. But the human fleet did not scatter. "Hold formation," Holt commanded. The Deathworlder ships advanced as one wall of iron. Rail cannons thundered, slinging slugs of dense metal at near-light speeds. Missiles launched in clouds, weaving through space like swarms of stinging insects. Defense lasers cut through incoming fire, shields glowing bright but holding firm. The Scarlec expected panic. Instead, they found resistance. From the surface of Solaris, civilians gathered in shelters watching the battle unfold on great screens. They saw the Deathworlder fleet charge forward, unflinching, even against impossible odds. Hope flickered where only despair had lived before. A young Solarian boy clutching his mother's hand whispered, "They don't run." "No," his mother answered softly, her eyes wide. "They fight." The first clash was brutal. Scarlec. Raiders swarmed, smaller and faster, diving at human ships like predators. But the humans had prepared for this. Carriers launched waves of fighters, sleek machines guided by men and women with nerves of steel. The fighters met the raiders head-on, darting through crossfire, missiles bursting in sharp blossoms of light. "Enemy raiders breaking," reported the tactical officer. "Press them," Holt ordered. "Do not let them regroup." The Deathworlders pressed hard. Where other fleets retreated to defend themselves, the humans advanced. It was a strategy born not from arrogance, but from their very nature. Humanity had always survived by meeting danger head-on, never giving it space to grow. The Scarlec realized quickly that these were not like other prey. On the Coalition flagship orbiting nearby, Chancellor Darrow and several counselors watched the battle. The chamber shook with each distant explosion, but their eyes stayed fixed on the screens. "Impossible," muttered Counselor Velru. Her feathers stood stiff with shock. "They fight as if the odds mean nothing." "They are Deathworlders," Darrow said quietly. "Odds mean nothing to them, only survival does." The counselors exchanged glances, some with awe, some with fear. None could look away. Back in the thick of battle, the Iron Resolve led the charge. Plasma fire tore past its hull, shaking the ship, but its shields held. Rail slugs hammered into Scarlec cruisers, ripping through armor. One enemy ship exploded in a chain of fire, debris scattering across the void. "Enemy warcruiser destroyed," the weapons officer reported. Holt gave a short nod. "Mark another. Keep moving." Every order was clear, every movement precise. The human fleet moved like a single creature, each ship protecting the next, each captain trusting the other. It was unity born of countless struggles back on their Deathworld home. The Scarlec warlord Korat roared on his command ship, furious. "These creatures defy us. They are not prey." His mandibles clashed as he slammed a claw against the console. "Break them. Tear them apart." But no matter how hard he pushed, the humans pushed back harder. On the battlefield, the Coalition ships hovered at the edge, too cautious to dive in. They had expected the humans to fall quickly. Instead, they saw them hold the line, even drive the enemy back. Some Coalition commanders, inspired, finally moved to join the fight. Their ships darted in, lending fire where they could. "Admiral," Holt acknowledged them with a single message: "Fight as you can. We will hold." And hold they did. Hours passed. Space became a graveyard of burning wrecks. The battle raged, neither side willing to yield. The Scarlec had numbers, but the humans had will. Again and again, Deathworlder ships took damage that would have shattered others, yet still fought on. Hulls scorched, shields flickering, crews bleeding, but not one ship turned away. At one point, a human destroyer, the Resolute Dawn, was struck in the engines. Instead of retreating, its captain rammed straight into a Scarlec carrier, detonating both in a blinding explosion. The shockwave rocked the system. Coalition officers watching gasped in horror and awe. "They destroy themselves to destroy their enemy," whispered one counselor. Darrow's voice was grim. "They fight like those who know death well, and fear it little." On the surface of Solaris, the people felt the battle in their bones. Every explosion shook the shelters. Every light in the sky was a reminder of the struggle above. In one shelter, an old Solarian veteran of past wars whispered to those around him. The stories were true. Deathworlders fight as if the universe itself is their enemy. Perhaps they are what we needed all along. The tide began to turn. Slowly, but surely. The Scarlec were fierce, but their confidence faltered. They had expected easy prey. Instead, they found prey that bit back harder than any predator. Admiral Holt seized the moment. "All ships, forward! Break their line!" The Deathworlder fleet surged. Railguns roared, missiles streaked, fighters swarmed. The human wall of iron smashed through the Scarlec formation, cutting them in half. Enemy ships scattered, some fleeing, others burning. The coalition forces followed, emboldened, striking at the broken enemy. For the first time in weeks, they tasted victory. On his flagship, Warlord Karat raged. His ships were falling back, his warriors dying. He could not believe it. "Deathworlders," he spat. "You dare stand against us?" But dare they had, and they had done more than stand. They had broken the unbreakable tide. At last, the order went through the Scarlec fleet. Retreat. Their ships pulled away, engines blazing, fleeing into the dark. The Deathworlders pursued only far enough to ensure safety, then regrouped. The now. Battle of Solaris was over. On Solaris, cheers erupted in every shelter, every city, every station. For the first time, they had seen the Scarlec beaten back. For the first time, they believed survival was possible. On Concordia, the council sat in stunned silence. Velru's feathers drooped as she whispered, "We called monsters, and they became our shield." Darrow only closed his eyes. He knew what it meant. The galaxy had changed that day. Aboard the Iron Resolve, Admiral Holt stood before his weary crew. Many ships were damaged, many lives lost, but the fleet stood victorious. He gave a single order. "Signal the coalition. Tell them Solaris is safe for now." And then, quieter, he added, "And tell them this is only the beginning," because Holt knew. The Scarlec would return, and humanity had only just begun to move. The Deathworlders had entered the battlefield, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Solaris system was quiet at last. For the first time in many weeks, no Scarlec ship stalked its skies. No enemy fire burned across its orbit. The space around the colony was filled with drifting wreckage, glowing embers of broken warships. Some belonged to the invaders, some belonged to the humans, but Solaris still stood. Its people were alive. To the coalition, this was a miracle. To humanity, it was only the beginning. Aboard the battleship Iron Resolve, Admiral Kieran Holt walked slowly across the medical bay. Rows of wounded lay in bunks, soldiers and crew alike. Some had burns, some had broken bones. Others simply stared, with exhaustion. They were alive but scarred by the battle. Nurses moved quickly, patching wounds and calming nerves. One soldier tried to sit up as Holt passed. "Admiral," the young man said weakly, Did we win?" Holt looked at him, at the bandages covering his arms, at the pain in his eyes. He placed a hand gently on the man's shoulder. "We held," Holt said firmly. "Solaris still breathes because of you." The soldier smiled faintly, then drifted back to sleep. Holt moved on. He knew many would never rise again. That was the price they had paid. Humanity had saved a world, but every life cost something. Across the system, coalition ships picked up survivors from the wreckage. The debris fields were vast, and in them floated not only broken metal but stories, ships that had fought until the end, crews that refused to retreat. Counselor Velru, who had doubted humanity most, stood on the observation deck of her shuttle, watching the human warships drift in formation. Their hulls were scarred, but they stood strong, still ready for more. "They fought like demons," one of her aides whispered. Velru's feathers trembled. "No, not demons. Something worse. Or perhaps something better. I do not know which." For the first time, she had no clear answer. Back on Concordia Prime, the Coalition Council gathered once more. The chamber felt different now. Before, it was filled with despair. Now it was filled with unease and questions. Chancellor Darrow rose to speak. Solaris was saved. The Scarlec were driven back, and it was not by our fleets, but by the Deathworlders. Murmurs filled the chamber. Some were proud, some were ashamed, many were afraid. Counselor Velru stood, her feathers sharp. Yes, they saved Solaris, but at what cost? Already they move like masters of war. Already they show no fear. Do you not see? We have traded one danger for another. What will happen when the humans decide we are the problem? Is survival not worth that risk? Asked Counselor Tayran. His scaled hands trembled, but his voice was steady. If the humans had not come, Solaris would be gone. Perhaps all of us soon after. Is it not better to face tomorrow, even with danger, than to be destroyed today? Velru hissed, but others nodded. The council was divided. Chancellor Darrow spoke again. We must face a truth. The humans have come. They will not leave until this war is finished. The question is not whether we trust them. The question is whether we stand with them or hide behind them. The hall grew silent. Meanwhile, on the surface of Solaris, the people welcomed their strange saviors. Damaged human ships landed to repair, their crews stepping onto alien soil. Civilians watched from a distance, unsure. The humans looked rough, their uniforms scarred, their faces tired, yet they smiled at children, shared food with soldiers, and repaired broken defenses without being asked. One Solarian farmer approached, a group of human engineers holding a basket of fruit. His hands shook as he offered it. For saving us, he said nervously. The human woman who accepted it gave him a weary smile. We were just doing what had to be done. The farmer blinked. He expected demands or arrogance. Instead, he found humility. It surprised him more than the battle itself. Word spread quickly across Solaris. The Deathworlders were not monsters. They were people. Tough, scarred, dangerous, but people who had chosen to fight for others. Admiral Holt soon met with coalition commanders on Solaris. Around a long table, maps of the galaxy glowed. Red marked the systems already lost to the Scarlec. Yellow marked those at risk. Green were the few still holding. Holt's eyes studied the map carefully. The Scarlec will not stop, he said. They retreat now, but only to gather strength. Their hunger is endless. They will come again in greater numbers. A coalition general spoke, his voice uneasy. Then what do you propose, Admiral? Holt's answer was firm. We don't wait for them. We take the fight to them. Strike. Their fleets, their bases, their factories. If they want war, then war is what they will have. The coalition commanders exchanged nervous looks. Offensive war was not their way. They defended, they retreated, they endured, but they did not charge. Velru, present as an observer, whispered sharply, "This is what I feared. They will not stop at saving us. They will drag us into their war, their way of fighting. Already they talk of attacking, of destruction. But," Tayran leaned forward, his scaled eyes bright, "perhaps that is what we need. We have been afraid too long. Maybe it takes Deathworlders to teach us courage." That night, Admiral Holt stood alone in his quarters aboard the Iron Resolve. He looked at a small picture on his desk. Earth, seen from orbit, a fragile blue sphere. His home. He knew many would die before this war was over. He knew some coalition leaders doubted him, even hated him. But he also knew the truth. If humanity did not act, no one else could. He whispered softly to himself, "We cannot save everyone, but we will save as many as we can. That is the price. We pay." In the weeks that followed, humanity and the coalition worked side by side. Repairs were made, fleets reorganized, defenses strengthened. For the first time, coalition soldiers trained with human marines, learning their brutal efficiency. The Deathworlders pushed them harder than they had ever been pushed before. But the results were clear. They grew stronger, yet with every success came whispers. Coalition citizens wondered, what would happen after the Scarlec were gone? Would the humans leave? Or would they stay, shaping the galaxy in their image? On the Scarlec flagship, Warlord Korat brooded. His defeat at Solaris burned like fire in his chest. Never before had prey pushed him back. Never before had his warriors tasted fear, but he swore it would not happen again. He began to gather every fleet he could, every weapon, every ship. The Deathworlders had shamed him. He would answer with destruction greater than any they had known. The war was not over. It was only waiting for its next storm. Back on Concordia, the Council argued endlessly, but the truth was undeniable. Without the Deathworlders, they would already be ashes. With them, they had a chance. Chancellor Darrow summed it up simply. The price of survival is never small. We pay with lives, with fear, with change, but better to pay that price than to be erased. The humans know this, and now so must we. And so the Coalition and the Deathworlders stood together, uneasy, uncertain, but united by necessity. Above, Solaris, the human fleet, repaired its wounds. New ships prepared to join them from Earth. The galaxy whispered of a new power rising, not of conquest, but of defiance. The SOS had been answered. Survival had been bought, but at a heavy cost. And greater battles still lay ahead. The galaxy had held its breath for weeks. Every planet, every star system, every colony watched as the Deathworlder fleet moved steadily toward the next point of conflict. The Scarlec had retreated, but only to regroup. Their hunger was far from sated. On Solaris, the people had begun to rebuild. The damage was immense, but hope had taken root. The humans had shown them that survival was possible. Yet even as repairs continued, eyes turned to the dark void beyond their orbit. Admiral Kieran Holt stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, watching the stars pass by at faster-than-light speed. Behind him, the fleet stretched like a wall of steel, dozens of ships, each carrying crew hardened by countless battles, each ready for the war to come. The tactical displays glowed with enemy movements. Scout reports indicated Scarlec fleets gathering in the distant system of Jalor, preparing to strike again. This time they would not be content with Solaris. They would aim for more worlds, more colonies, more innocent lives. Holt's jaw tightened. Prepare for jump, all ships ready. Jalor will not stand against us. His officers nodded, their faces set in grim determination. They were Deathworlders. Retreat was not in their nature. Survival was their law, and victory their habit. Indeed. The Coalition command halls, the counselors debated the humans' next move. They will not leave any enemy standing, Velru said, her feathers bristling. Mark my words, Chancellor. They will push the Scarlec to the edge and we will follow in their wake. We are not ready for this kind of war. Terran, however, leaned forward with quiet intensity. And yet, Chancellor, would we have survived without them? They are teaching us, yes, teaching us to endure, to fight harder, to act with purpose. We must follow whether we are ready or not. Darrow, as ever, said nothing at first. Then he finally spoke. The humans did not ask to be our teachers. They answered a call. If we follow them, we learn. If we do not, we fall. The choice is simple. The counselors were silent. It was simple, but not easy. The human fleet entered Jalor system in perfect formation. From orbit, the devastation left by the Scarlec was evident. Worlds scarred, colonies burning, satellites shattered, but the humans did not hesitate. They had a plan. Scan for enemy positions, Holt commanded. We strike where they least expect. Fighter drones launched first, buzzing across space like swarms of protective insects. Railguns followed, slamming into enemy cruisers with devastating force. Missiles streaked across the void, each carrying precise charges designed to disable rather than destroy the planet itself. The Scarlec had expected a chase. They had expected humans to fight defensively like all other species. They had been wrong. On the surface of GalacticPrime, civilians hid in shelters, both alien and human observers alike. The ground shook with every distant explosion, but hope stirred among those watching. If the humans could fight like this in orbit, perhaps the Scarlec could finally be stopped. Admiral Holt's voice came through secure channels to ground units. Stay calm. Protect civilians, we will clear the skies. Trust your weapons and trust each other. The Marines, both human and coalition, nodded. They had already learned much from the humans' discipline. They were no longer afraid. They were ready. The battle began in earnest. The Scarlec deployed their carriers and warships with speed, but the humans were faster. Each strike was coordinated, precise, and devastating. Human ships would take fire that could destroy ordinary vessels and continue forward, shields flaring, systems functioning. Ground forces moved simultaneously, clearing Scarlec raiding. Parties from cities and colonies. Humans led the way, often taking the most dangerous positions. Their determination inspired coalition soldiers to fight harder, their tactics transforming allies who had once only survived into true warriors. Their courage. It's contagious, whispered one Solarian soldier. Yes, said a human, Marine beside him. That's what survival looks like. Despite their advanced technology, the Scarlec began to falter. Their formations broke under relentless assault. They tried to regroup, but every move was anticipated. The Deathworlders did not just fight. They learned, adapted, and struck with intelligence and efficiency that left even the Scarlec surprised. Warlord Korat, commanding from the rear of his fleet, felt a rare sense of fear. His claws clenched around the console. They are not like any prey we have known, he snarled. Every strike I order is countered, every attack predicted. How can this be? His sub-commanders whispered nervously, some questioning his decisions for the first time. The humans were relentless. The Scarlec's confidence had been shattered. Hours turned into days. Jalor's system became a battlefield of fire and metal. Each Scarlec ship that fell was replaced by another, but the humans never wavered. They were patient, coordinated, and fierce. Coalition commanders began to realize something profound. The humans were not fighting for glory, not for conquest, not even for themselves. They were fighting because it was right. They fought because someone had called for help and they answered. The truth sank in slowly. They were saviors, not only in strength but in spirit. After a week of relentless combat, the Scarlec finally began retreating in disarray. Ships that had once seemed unstoppable now fled through the void, many damaged beyond repair. Human ships pursued selectively, striking only those who threatened escape or regrouping. The coalition and civilians watched in awe. Never before had they seen a species so unyielding, so precise, so terrifying in their determination, and yet so controlled. Admiral Holt finally allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He knew the war was far from over, but this victory marked a turning point. We have taken the first step, he said softly. The rest of the galaxy will see what we are capable of. In the aftermath, the coalition began to act differently. Training intensified, ships were reinforced, and strategies shifted. Where fear had once ruled, confidence began to grow. Aliens who had doubted humanity before now spoke of them with respect. Counselor Velru, still cautious, finally admitted aloud, I feared them at first. I thought they would destroy us even as they saved us. But now, I see. They do not fight for themselves. They fight for life itself. Terran smiled quietly. And in doing so, they have taught us more than any teacher ever could. Chancellor, Darrow nodded. The galaxy will never be the same. The Deathworlders have arrived, and with them hope and power both. Meanwhile, across the systems, the Scarlec regrouped. Warlord Korat vowed revenge, but the fear of humans lingered in his warriors. Stories of their relentless endurance and clever tactics spread quickly. Even the Scarlec began to whisper the name Deathworlders. a species that would not stop, that would not bend, that would not die. In the vast emptiness of space, their reputation grew. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as protectors. Those who needed help would find them. Those who sought destruction would learn caution. On Solaris, civilians walked the streets freely again. Buildings were damaged, but life continued. Children played among the ruins, watching as human engineers repaired infrastructure. Ships departed and returned, supplies delivered and guidance given. One small girl looked up at the stars, asking her mother, "Will they leave us now?" Her mother smiled softly. "Perhaps someday, but for now, they are here, and they will protect us. That is enough." The girl nodded. Even at her young age, she could sense something extraordinary. These humans were different. They were survivors. They were hope. On the Iron Resolve, Holt surveyed the fleet. New ships from Earth were joining them, ready for the next battle. The crew was weary but determined. They had proven themselves capable of facing impossible odds. Holt turned to his officers. "We move on. The Scarlec will regroup, and we will find them. Every world at risk, every colony in danger, we will be there. Humanity does not leave calls unanswered." The officers nodded, knowing the truth in his words. This was more than a fleet. This was a force that could change the course of history. The galaxy had seen destruction and fear, but it had also seen courage and endurance. The SOS from the Coalition had been more than a plea for help. It had been a spark. And the human fleet, the Deathworlders, had become the fire that followed. In every corner of space, whispers began, "The Deathworlders are coming." And where once there had been fear, now there was hope. Because when Deathworlders moved, the galaxy itself changed. The SOS had been answered. Survival had been won, for now. And the story of the humans, the Deathworlders, would be told across the stars for generations to come.